So I got involved as soon as I could, basically, but maybe on a slightly unusual path. I didn't come from a political or cultural background where my family was involved in unions, or even in a part of the country where unions were particularly active. But as a grad student, I had experienced a union effort, and I had watched an administration of a prestigious public university act more like a big business than I ever expected possible. And I realized the importance of the accountability that unions provide. And so I didn't hesitate. And actually, I experienced a little bit of that in my own department as well. I've been here as an adjunct. I'm now an NTTF. But as an adjunct, there were a couple of times where there was unilateral action that really made a difference to my status here. And it wasn't that the action was necessarily reasonable or unreasonable. On at least one occasion I would say it was unreasonable. It was a unilateral 20% pay cut per course. That felt unreasonable at the time. But I think more than that, there was no process, there was no recourse, there was no dialogue. And that stings a little bit when you start to realize that there's unilateral power being wielded over you. And it's kind of funny because I've had a number of conversations over time where people have wondered about why we have a union, whether all the work we're doing on the collective bargaining agreement is worthwhile. And that little anecdote of a 20% unilateral pay cut delivered to me has been pretty compelling. I am really enthusiastic about the union and really supportive of the effort. I think it's really still playing out, and I'm very curious to see where we end up. I don't in any way doubt the validity of the effort, but I think we're still in this phase of figuring out what the collective bargaining agreement is going to mean for different people, and I'm optimistic and excited about where we'll end up. But I acknowledge it's been a lot of work to date, without question. Although I hesitate to generalize, I guess at a very anecdotal level, I feel like there is a new focus on transparency and fairness, and it seems like a bit of a pain, I think, to the people who have to implement that early on. But things like democracy and universal suffrage can be a pain too. So I don't really feel bad about that. I think it's just work we have to do. It's just we haven't had to do it before, so it feels like work. But I'm excited about where we're going. I have to admit, I guess I'm a little bit trusting in union leadership and, frankly, the collaboration between the union and the administration in constructing a productive path forward. But I'd also, I guess, if there is some vision that I have, it's really that we will achieve outcomes that are fair, but that will also maintain. And maybe this is part of fairness. We'll also maintain some flexibility. We'll also maintain the ability to acknowledge different circumstances. I'm in an interesting situation. I teach in the business school, but really as an adjunct who has been a practitioner in the business world. And I was the owner, one of the co-owners of a small consulting firm. And we worked really hard to create a humane workplace. We had tremendous transparency. I think to many people, totally surprising transparency. All salaries were known, all benefits were known. We were very collaborative about how we did things. We asked for tremendous input from our employees, and the firm continues to do that. After I moved on, so we really built a culture of that. And I hope we can achieve some of that. You can't have the same expectation for a much larger institution with thousands of employees as you do for a small company, which just by definition can be flexible and nimble and really understand people's circumstances. but you still have to be chasing that goal. You still have to be, trying to understand individual circumstances. You have to learn from those and be building, whatever templates and processes you have around, an understanding of the diversity of circumstances. So I guess that's a big part of my. Maybe vision's too strong a word, but certainly my aspiration for this. And I think it'll probably be a little while before we get there. I think necessarily this is about first building some scaffolding that might feel confining to some people. A collective bargaining agreement is by definition something at first that really sort of confines and prevents certain unfortunate behaviors that had happened in the past. But I really hope we can get to that different place where we're working together, and that I don't know if that's everybody's vision, but I think in the long run it should be. There should be some alignment of purpose. It's so tricky at a university where academic freedom, almost by definition, has people off doing pursuing different core purposes at the level of the individual, and that's great. That's what universities are for. But we have to find some of that common ground, so we're also working toward common goals. Tricky, but that's what I hope for. I just hope everybody in the process proceeds in good faith. It's I can sense the sneers from some people at the idea, because often if you're at the place where you've created a union, or you're early in a collective bargaining agreement, or you've gotten to the place where you feel like you need to do this, then almost by definition people are in a place where they have suspected the lack of good faith on the other side. So it's hard, but at some point that's where I think we have to get to. But I hope people who engage this elsewhere, and for that matter here at U of O, don't think of this only in the context of other labor struggles and other unionization efforts. I'm not saying be quixotic and ahistorical. We have to understand, you rob yourself of important understanding if you take yourself entirely out of that context and think, this is special, I'm special, this is a different situation. What I said before about my experience as a grad student and really waking up and realizing that large institutions of one kind can act in unfortunate ways, like large institutions of other kinds, that's a pretty important insight. And I have carried that with me, and I share it with people because I think it's important to understand how a big university can act like a big business. But at the same time, I think it can be limiting and counterproductive if we paint ourselves entirely inside the lines of pre-existing political narratives. And I'm not weighing in on which ones are going to work at any particular moment, but just that's what we have to keep our eyes open for. A world where every conversation, every policy discussion, every collective bargaining agreement negotiation is predefined by identity politics that are, rigid and overwhelming, is a really unfortunate world. So, I think that message sounds naive to some people, but sometimes naivete and optimism look the same at first. So I hope we can. I hope people in other places take that away, and I hope we actually manage to live that here. That we manage to do something that's not completely defined by the politics that we've experienced already, or that we've sort of entered with in our minds.